On August 11, 2025, President Trump did something no American president has ever done. He seized control of a major city's police force and deployed over 2,000 federal troops to patrol its streets. Within 48 hours, Washington, D.C. was under complete federal control, and the constitutional crisis was just beginning.
This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back.
Here's exactly how Trump pulled off the most controversial domestic military operation in modern history, the obscure 1973 law that made it possible, and why this moment could permanently change the balance of power between federal and local government in America. Trump didn't wake up one morning and decide to take over D.C. His intervention was built on statistics that painted America's capital as genuinely dangerous. D.C. had earned the dubious honor of leading the nation in car theft, 842.4 thefts per 100,000 residents, more than triple the national average. But vehicle theft was just the beginning. The city's murder rate told an even more alarming story. At 27.54 homicides per 100,000 residents in 2024, Washington ranked among America's most violent major cities. According to FBI data, DC's homicide rate placed it 11th among big US cities, hardly the image you'd expect for the world's most powerful democracy. Trump's team took these numbers and ran with them, arguing that America's capital had become an international embarrassment. By some measures, they claimed, DC ranked, quote, among the top 20% of the most dangerous cities in the world, end quote.
So you look at the kind of numbers we have. DC, 41 per 100,000, number one that we can find anywhere in the world. Other cities are pretty bad, but they're not as bad as that.
But then something interesting happened. When critics started pointing to different data, police statistics showing crime at 30-year lows, Trump had a nuclear response ready. DC provided fake crime numbers to create a deceptive sense of safety, Trump posted on social media. This is an extremely detrimental and perilous act, and they are facing serious scrutiny for it. Trump's Justice Department had launched an investigation into whether DC police were systematically lying about crime statistics. The allegations were specific. Supervisors were allegedly directing officers to reclassify violent crimes as minor offenses, making shootings disappear into injury reports, and turning carjackings into simple thefts. This investigation transformed the entire debate. Suddenly, every statistic became suspect. Every claim about falling crime rates could be dismissed as part of an alleged cover-up. Trump had found a way to make his critics' own data work against them. Of course, there was a catch. The investigation was launched after Trump's takeover decision, not before. Critics would later argue this was a post hoc justification, finding evidence to support an action already taken rather than genuine grounds for emergency intervention.
Here's lesson number one. Do not say this.
Don't take the bait in talking about migrant crime or carjackings or the things that actually don't matter to that many Americans. And then go to the policy proposals that we think work.
While Trump's team was building their statistical case, a brutal street crime provided the perfect human face for their argument. Edward Korestein, just 19 years old, was standing with his girlfriend next to their car when 10 teenagers surrounded them, demanding the vehicle. When Korestein tried to protect his girlfriend by pushing her into the car, the group beat him so severely that photos later showed him bloodied and sitting on the pavement. But this wasn't just another DC crime statistic. Korestein had worked directly under Elon Musk at the controversial Department of Government Efficiency, with high-level access to Homeland Security, FEMA, and cybersecurity agencies. For Trump, this was the smoking gun. When federal employees can't walk safely to work in our own capital, he declared, we have a national security crisis. Here was a federal worker with security clearances being brutally beaten just blocks from the White House. The image was perfect for Trump's narrative. Young government worker serving his country attacked by a mob, bloodied on American streets. It was exactly the kind of story that could justify extraordinary federal action. Trump's DC intervention didn't happen in a vacuum. It occurred against a backdrop of broader concerns about crime in major American cities, most of them run by Democratic mayors. The statistics painted a concerning picture that extended far beyond Washington. According to a Heritage Foundation analysis, 27 of the top 30 cities with the highest murder rates were run by Democratic mayors. Chicago had maintained America's highest total murder count for 12 consecutive years, with 617 homicides in 2023.
We cannot incarcerate our way out of violence. We've already tried that. And we've ended up with the largest prison population in the world without solving the problems of crime and violence. The addiction on jails and incarceration in this country, we have moved past that. It is racist, it is immoral, it is unholy, and it is not the way to drive violence down.
Baltimore maintained one of the nation's highest homicide rates despite various reform efforts. Even cities claiming success showed troubling patterns. New York, under Mayor Eric Adams, presented a perfect example of how crime statistics could tell multiple stories. While murders and shootings fell dramatically, homicides down 22% and gun violence down over 40%, overall crime rose steadily, with total violations climbing 28% to reach levels not seen in a decade. These mixed results across Democratic-led cities provided Trump with a broader narrative. Local leadership was failing, and federal intervention might be necessary to restore order where local authorities couldn't or wouldn't act. With his justification established, Trump needed legal authority for an unprecedented action. His weapon was Section 740 of the D.C. Home Rule Act, a provision so obscure that most constitutional lawyers had never heard of it.
Under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States, I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that.
That casual phrase, "you know what that is," revealed everything. This wasn't improvisation. Trump's legal team had spent months studying this 1973 provision that allows the president to commandeer DC's police force during, quote, special conditions of an emergency nature, end quote. The beauty of Section 740 from Trump's perspective was its vague language. Emergency could mean whatever the president wanted it to mean. No definition, no clear criteria, no constitutional precedent. It was like finding a loaded gun that everyone had forgotten existed. Trump didn't just federalize DC's police, he militarized the entire capital. Within hours, 800 DC National Guard members were activated, but that was just the beginning. Republican governors from 6 states answered Trump's call, sending additional troops in an unprecedented display of interstate military cooperation.
About 2,200 National Guard troops seen patrolling the nation's capital, spotted at train stations and outside national monuments.
Then came the real escalation. On August 24th, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth authorized troops to carry loaded weapons on patrol. Suddenly, American streets had armed soldiers walking beats like a war zone. The coordination was unlike anything local authorities could achieve. FBI agents, ICE personnel, ATF investigators, DEA officers, U.S. Marshals, National Guard troops, and local police, all working under unified federal command. It was federal power unleashed at a scale that dwarfed local capabilities. Whatever you thought about Trump's legal authority or political motivations, the operation produced immediate, measurable results. Within 2 weeks, over 550 arrests and 76 illegal firearms seized. These weren't minor infractions. Federal agents captured gang members, fugitives with violent crime warrants, and hundreds of undocumented immigrants with criminal records.
America is back.
One evening operation alone involved nearly 2,000 officers and netted 91 arrests, including 25 undocumented immigrants with prior criminal histories. This level of coordination was simply impossible under the previous fragmented approach.
We also have updated numbers on the crime crackdown in D.C. So the White House says more than 900 arrests have been made since August 7th. That includes 5 known gang members. Saturday night alone, there were 93 arrests. 46 of those were people in the country illegally.
The immigration enforcement component accomplished something that had been politically impossible under local control. DC's sanctuary policies had protected undocumented immigrants with criminal records from deportation, but federal control eliminated these obstacles overnight.
But it turned out that all we really needed was a new president.
Trump's team held daily press conferences showcasing the statistics. Thanks to President Trump's bold actions to make D.C. safe again, more than 550 dangerous criminals have been removed from the streets, the White House announced. Each arrest became evidence that federal intervention was both necessary and effective. But here's where Trump's story hit a major snag. The people he claimed to be protecting didn't want his help. Polling showed 80% of DC residents opposed the federal takeover and military deployment. Restaurant reservations dropped 30% as people avoided what felt like an occupied city. DC Attorney General Brian Schwab filed federal lawsuits challenging Trump's authority. The ACLU described the operation as, quote, consolidating power and creating fear in the nation's capital, end quote. Legal experts worried that the vague language of Section 740 could justify almost any federal intervention in the future. Critics raised fundamental questions about democratic consent. If residents overwhelmingly opposed federal intervention, but that intervention was legally permissible, what did that say about self-governance? Was public safety more important than local democracy?
I agree. In Upper Northwest and like the areas, because it's hard finding actual DC residents here in this area. It's mostly like bureaucrats and whatnot. It's not the real DC people. Do they generally support this? Do they feel like they want crime to be under control, or are they against it?
I do. I believe that most people that live here, that work hard every day and have families, they want the crime rate to be brought under control. They want the situation of, like I said, children being shot, seniors being assaulted. They want that under control. Okay. And I believe that this is the best thing that has happened to this city in a very, very long time, for the president to take control and, of the police, of the crime. I think it's a great idea. I really, really do.
This tension exposed the heart of the constitutional crisis Trump had created. Independent crime analysts pointed to data showing violent crime had actually fallen 26% in 2025 compared to 2024, following substantial decreases in previous years. The emergency justification seemed overstated at best, manufactured at worst. Constitutional scholars worried about precedent. If a president could suspend local democracy based on disputed emergency claims, what other crises might justify federal takeovers? Trump's explicit threats to expand the operation to Chicago, New York, and Baltimore suggested this was just the beginning. Section 740 included a crucial limitation. Federal control could only last 30 days without congressional approval. As that deadline approached, Trump faced his first real constitutional test. Would Congress extend his authority, or would America's capital return to local control? Trump hinted at a nuclear option. I don't want to call a national emergency. If I have to, I will, he warned. Legal experts said this approach had no constitutional basis, but Trump seemed prepared to trigger a full constitutional crisis rather than give up federal control. The congressional vote would determine whether Trump's action represented temporary emergency response or permanent expansion of political power. The precedent would echo through American politics for decades to come. Trump's federal takeover of Washington, D.C. ultimately forced Americans to confront fundamental questions about power, democracy, and governance that had been lurking beneath the surface for years. On one side, legitimate concerns about urban crime, federal worker security, and the effectiveness of local leadership in America's most important city. The arrest statistics were real, the coordination was unprecedented, and the results were measurable. On the other side, overwhelming local opposition, disputed emergency justifications, and fears about the normalization of federal override of local democracy. The constitutional implications were staggering. The precedent was dangerous, and the long-term consequences were unknowable. Perhaps most importantly, Trump had demonstrated that the legal tools for federal takeover already existed. They just needed a president willing to use them. Section 740 wasn't some obscure historical fact. It was a loaded weapon waiting for the right moment and the right person to pull the trigger. Whether you see Trump's DC takeover as necessary federal leadership or dangerous executive overreach, one thing is certain. It revealed how fragile the balance between federal and local authority really is when someone has both the legal tools and political will to upset it. The constitutional crisis Trump created in Washington wasn't just about one city or one moment. It was about the fundamental question of who gets to govern America when local and federal authorities collide. And that's a question that will outlast any single presidency, any single crisis, and any single city. Thank you for watching The People's Press. Make sure to like and subscribe for weekly videos breaking down complex political topics.